What is up, German metal fans? So, do I have something interesting to talk about today? There's this band called Faithful Breath. What if I told you that this band started off with 2 prog albums in the 70s, as far back as 1974, then in the early 80s put out 2 hard rock albums, dressing like Vikings, mind you, and then into the mid to late 80s, well, actually more like mid 80s, they would do a couple of heavy metal albums in the style of like Accept and Scorpions. And then what if I told you they decided to ditch the Viking thing and decided to change their band name to Risk and play speed metal and thrash metal while ditching the Viking thing and adding a jungle animal theme? Sounds like I'm making this up, doesn't it? But I'm not. This is probably one of the most interesting bands that I've ever discovered. And the way I discovered this, me and a friend were at a record store somewhere in Castleton, Indiana, I believe. And he found a vinyl with a picture of a Viking just kind of like sitting with a, I don't know. I don't remember what he's doing exactly in the picture, but there's just a Viking sitting on the picture, and the album is called Skull, and the band was called Faithful Breath, and we're like looking at this, and we're like, you know, that's metal. It's like, you know, between the both of us, you'd think we'd know who this is. Like, we think we'd heard of this band, but we didn't. And I don't think I bought it, but I remembered the name Faithful Breath's, album Skull. I decided to check it out later. And then later I had a friend, the name of John, he showed me this band called Risk. And funny enough, I've heard of Risk. I remember seeing them on YouTube before, like, as like a recommendation. I remember seeing these jungle animals and stuff on there, and I was like, that looks stupid, but you never know. So I just thought it's one of those obscure bands. But he showed me the band Risk, and I'm like, hey, yeah, I've heard of them. And he showed me their first album under the name Risk called The Daily Horror News or whatever. And I remember thinking, wow, this is some of the best speed metal I've ever heard. Like, it's almost like a speed power metal, but I remember thinking, this is awesome. I had to buy it. Then I ended up buying all the other Risk albums. And then I decided to go check out Faithful Breath some more. And I think I got on Metal Archives and I realized, whoa, wait. Faithful Breath is Risk. Like, I was thinking, what? Like, so that band with the Viking on it, that album Skull, somehow they went from that album to Daily Horror News within like a year or two or whatever. I'm thinking this is the craziest discovery I've ever seen. So, I checked out some Faithful Breath. John didn't seem to like Faithful Breath, but there's a lot of stuff he don't seem to like. So I don't know. He's a lot more pickier than I am. But I checked out some Faithful Breath. I heard the heavy metal stuff, and I thought, man, this is actually pretty cool. So I had to get that. Then I found out they got an album from 1974, and I'm like, and it's just pure prog. Like, what? Like, we're like predating Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny, but not that it's a heavy album or anything. So anyway, I will say, all in all, Faithful Breath and Risk, both with the same band, but both projects or whatever, kind of have their ups and downs. I do find like they got moments of glory, then they also have a lot of disappointing moments, which it's very unfortunate because they're really talented. They can really do some great stuff when they want to. And all I know is the front man, guitar player, I believe his name is Heinz Mikus. And I think I've even heard like his nickname or whatever is Jaime. I don't know. So I just kind of like started digging into this band. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning when they did Fading Beauty. Was their first album from '74, just pure prog, a lot of like organ, keyboard, and it's just a weird album. It's not bad. I think it's an interesting listen. It's not one that I come back to very often. I bet if I'd put more time into it, I'd probably like it a lot more. I think it's okay. It's nothing that grabs me for a long time, but it's okay. And then they did another album in like the 70s, late 70s or whatever, called Back on My Hill. And it's a little different. And I don't believe Heinz Mikus sings on this one. If he does, he's not like the lead vocalist by any means, I don't think. Because he's got kind of a distinctive voice, and this guy's a little more clean. But the music on Back on My Hill, it's a little more traditional type prog rock, whereas don't expect Rush or anything. Like, we're not talking this good. But Fading Beauty, I think it even had only like 3 tracks. They were just like really long tracks, and I think the album's like well over 30, between 30 40 minutes maybe. I can't remember. But Back on My Hill, a little more standard rock. And it's okay. I'll be honest, there's some stuff on there that's pretty cool. Again, it's not something that grabs me, makes me want to come back and listen to it again. It's okay though. And then they decided, this isn't working out for us, so let's jump into just hard rock. Now we have Heinz Mikus, doing vocals, and I'll be honest, the music on the 2 hard rock albums they did. So they did Rock Lions and Hard Breath. The music's fine. Actually, the guitar playing, some pretty good hard rock riffs on there. It's not bad. But the problem is, I can't really get sucked into it because I feel like the choruses and melodies are just not very strong. Like, the guitar playing is a lot better than the songwriting. I'll say that. So I always try to listen to them. Like every year or two, I put it in at least once to see if, my opinion has changed. And I just can't quite get into them. I'll listen to the guitar and I'll be like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is probably pretty promising. And then it just loses me. And I have a hard time listening to them all the way through. So as a prog band, I'd say they're okay. As a hard rock band, I'd say they're very, very mediocre. Then they decided that's not working out for them, and I agree. And they decided to do heavy metal in the vein of Accept. And let me tell you something. So their first heavy metal album was Golden Glory. This right here is the crown jewel of Faithful Breath. This album is where it's at. If you only get one Faithful Breath album, get this one, because it is every bit as good as any Accept album, in my opinion. It's excellent. The songwriting is great. The production's great. Heinz Mikus sounds great. He's, he doesn't really sound like Udo Dirkschneider or anything, but he kind of has that style of vocal. I mean, you could tell where the influence is. It's very German. You could probably even hear a little bit of Scorpions in the music. So it's just very, very German heavy metal, which is a cool thing in my opinion. I even think somebody from Accept actually helped them produce it. It might even have been Udo Dirkschneider himself. I should have looked that up for the video. I kind of forgot who it was. But so yeah, so there's a reason why there's a lot of Accept in this. So yeah, that album is fantastic. And then they did another album kind of in the same vein, and this is the one that I was talking about earlier, called Skull. When I say skull, not like S-K-U-L-L, like a skull in your head. It's S-K-O-L, skull, I guess. So yeah, so Skull isn't as good as Golden Glory, but it's still pretty good. It's still very much Accept. The songwriting's decent, but I just think Golden Glory was just a lot more memorable. had a lot more of a variety. I don't know. There was just a lot more going for it, in my opinion. But Skull's still pretty good. So, Faithful Breath. So, we've got one great album, a really good heavy metal album. Then we got two bland hard rock albums, and then two decent prog albums. And then they decided to change their name to Risk. And, you know, I'll talk about Risk later. I haven't visited their whole catalog in a while. Their first Risk album, Daily Horror News, is a dang masterpiece. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that's one of the best German speed metal albums ever. I mean, the whole album is solid. It's absolutely solid. And I unfortunately, I feel like they kind of lost the edge off that album. Like, that album was just solid, and then they kind of started getting more thrash rather than speed metal, and it wasn't as memorable. So I think the second Risk album was Hell's Animals, like Hell's Angels. There's like animals on motorcycles, like whatever. And then they did like Dirty Surfaces, which has like animals like surfing or something. It's not bad. And then, they did one. I can't remember it. I'll have to revisit them, but yeah. So as far as Faithful Breath goes, Golden Glory is a mandatory one. Skull is a decent choice. It's a good choice if you want another Faithful Breath album. And if you want to get into Risk, Daily Horror News, 100%. So yeah. So the crown jewel of their whole career is Golden Glory and Daily Horror News. But just thought I should talk about some Faithful Breath today. Share an interesting band with the world. And funny story, when I was on 70,000 Tons of Metal, I was talking to, of all people, P.V. Wagner from Rage. Actually, the whole band under the Refuge lineup. So, you know, like, so those three guys, I was talking to them. I don't know what we were talking about, but somehow I mentioned Faithful Breath, and he's like, "You've heard of Faithful Breath?" Like, P.V. Wagner said that to me, and I was like, "Yeah, I actually have." And he was like surprised about that, so I thought that was kind of cool that I surprised P.V. Wagner with that. Yeah, so, and I think after that we went and seen the band Pretty Maids. Yeah, it was a cool time. But anyway, if you like this video, like, subscribe, comment. What's your favorite Faithful Breath Faithful Breath album and or Risk? And stay metal, and talk to you later.